I was 16, and I just remember just feeling so confused about my health, what to do. Looking back, I know that the change in environment doesn't just fix your mental health. I thought that being an overachiever would fix everything. So I was a straight A student, all-star athlete. Then I quickly realized that overachieving doesn't fix anything.
Welcome back to the Creator Method podcast. Today I'm joined by Dr. Bisleen. You are a naturopathic doctor focusing on mental wellness and nervous system regulation. Yeah. Okay, amazing. Well, I'm very excited to dive in and really get to it. So for starters, talk to me about how you started.
Yeah, so I have actually a bit of an interesting story that I don't talk about enough in terms of how I started. And I'm sorry, are you talking about being a naturopathic doctor or
either one? How'd you get into it in general? Doctor.
Doctor? Okay, we'll start with doctor first.
Yeah.
So I actually struggled a lot with my mental health when I was growing up. I was bullied in middle school. And then when I got into high school, I just didn't really get the support that I needed. I thought that being an overachiever would fix everything. So I was a straight A student, all-star athlete. And then I quickly realized that overachieving doesn't fix anything. And so because I didn't get the support that I really needed with my mental health, it just started to get worse and worse and worse. And I remember at that time, I went and talked to my doctor about what I was feeling, and he literally gave me this prescription, and he told me, here are these happy pills. Take them and you'll feel better. And so I remember leaving the doctor.
How old were you?
I was 16.
Okay.
And I remember being like, happy pills. I was like, I don't even know what's wrong with me. Like, can I get more explanation? And I just remember just feeling so confused about my health, what to do. And my parents were like, we don't want you to take these medications. You're too young. And they were like, you're going to go to university soon and things will start to get better for you. But now looking back, I know that the change in environment doesn't just fix your mental health. And so when I got into university, things just got worse and worse for me. And I actually ended up in the hospital as a result of how bad my mental health got. And that's when I had like a really, really big wake-up call. And I was like, if I don't get better, like I'm going to end up here again. And I was afraid I wouldn't leave the next time I went there. And so that's when my journey with my mental health really began. And I started, going to therapy, trying different medications, trying group therapy, like everything under the sun. And none of it worked for me that well. Like I was getting a little bit better, but I was like, I still don't feel as good as I think I could. And that's when I started to take my health into my own hands. And so, I was this university student trying every diet under the sun, waking up at 5 a.m., going to the gym, working on my sleep, reading books. And while my friends were partying, I just got obsessed with my own health. Not to say that I didn't party at all.
Yeah.
And so when I started to really work on my body, I started to feel so much better. And all the work that I was doing in therapy started to work so much better. And that's when I was just like, wow, like I can actually wake up and feel good every single day, and without relying on medication or anything else outside of me. And so through that, I discovered naturopathic medicine, and I was like, wow, this is a profession, like I need to get into this. And so that's how I got into it. And
what were you in school for to begin with?
I was in school for biomedical science.
Okay.
And
so not disconnected. But
not disconnected, but still very far away
right.
from what I'm doing now.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting where I find, and this happens a lot, and I find that, and we'll get into it with creators or with youth or with anybody, it's kind of like a one solution for everything approach. And I know that that's obviously not the case personally, and I know that that's not the case for you. So on the other hand, your parents could have just said, okay, take this medication, and that also wouldn't have solved it, right? So I really want your take and kind of what you think about then that approach, because then there's the kind of, okay, take medication, but both have to work in tandem.
100%. And, I'm not against medications at all.
Yeah.
There was a period in my life where I used medication for a couple of months. I just think that there's so many other things that we can do to support ourselves. And I think that depending on the stage of life you're in, like sometimes I'll have conversations with patients and they're just in such a wild stage of life where there's so much going on for them that they just don't have the capacity to be able to work on some of the lifestyle strategies that are going to support them. So we have that hard conversation, because so many people that come to me, they're like, I don't want to take medications. I'm so against it. And I have to have the conversation of just like, let's look at the capacity you have to work on the lifestyle stuff. And if you don't, then let's have you use medication for a little bit, use it to support yourself, bring down some of those really big symptoms you're experiencing. And then in a couple of months, we can revisit this. So I think it's all about looking at what stage of life are you in, what capacity do you have, and really trying to make sure that you meet someone, especially as a healthcare practitioner there, because I know so many doctors will push things on people or just not take that approach of looking at what someone's capacity actually is and supporting them that way.
It's interesting because I think that even coming for me of like being a CEO and managing a business, it's the same thing. It's not a one size fits all solution, but it really has to be, and even working with creators, it has to be something that's going to work for the individual, or it just doesn't work. And that goes with health, that goes mental health, fitness, work, everything. It's just not this one size
Exactly.
fits
And I've
all
learned
approach.
that too, exactly, just like being a creator as well, like looking at what stage of life am I in, how busy are other things, and what is the capacity that I have to be able to give to my creator side at this place specifically.
Okay, so fast forward, you then decide, okay, I'm practicing naturopathic medicine, you're building this practice. How did you get into then sharing it on social media and becoming a creator?
Yeah, so funny story. So I was actually one of my last friends to ever get Instagram. So everybody had Instagram, and I didn't get it until I was in my first few years of university. And by that point, all my friends had it, and everybody was telling me, you need to get on it. And I'm like, I hate social media.
Yeah.
Like, it's so stupid. Here I am now. And so what I started to do when I actually first got into naturopathic medical school my first year, so I used to love trying new things, like loved it. In university, I did like spoken word poetry, and I would just put myself out there in all these different environments. And I was online and I saw this ad for the Miss World Canada pageant. And I was talking to one of my girlfriends, and I was just laughing to her on the phone, and I was like, should I just do this? She's like, yeah, why not? I was like, okay, cool, I'll do it. So that's what I did. I actually joined the Miss World Canada pageant.
Wow.
And I have never done pageants before, never even been interested in them. And I was like, why not? Let me just try it out. At that time also, I wanted to do more speaking events in my community, and I was like, it would be cool to have this like little pageant title and be like, I am Miss XYZ, and I would love to do a talk here. And so I did the Miss World Canada pageant, and for that, you actually had to be very active on social media.
How many years ago was that? Because that feels like it was ahead of its time.
Yeah, that was 2018.
Okay, I'm just old.
When you realize you're just old.
I was like, wow, this is so long ago. Okay, so you had to be on social.
Oh my goodness, I'm dying. I might be younger than I look. So you had to be on socials for that. So that's when I really started posting on social media, and I really started to enjoy it. And then I won the title of Miss Peel World in the provincials, and then I went to the nationals. Quickly realized I hate pageantry. I don't like anything about it. Yeah. But it was a really, really cool experience that forced me to get outside of my comfort zone.
I say that about public speaking, or like I loved being on the debate team. Yeah. Am I debating on a day-to-day basis about the things that I was doing, like parliament issues? No. But it gave me the skill set that helped me. So that's so interesting about pageant.
Exactly. And so that's exactly what it forced me to do. It forced me to work on my confidence and my skills, and all of that stuff now I use as a creator when I'm in front of the camera. And so I left pageantry behind, but I really loved just posting online. So throughout school, I was just like posting here or there. And then when I graduated...
And was it, posting, like documenting the way that anybody would have been using social media
at
that early stages?
Yeah, less documentation. I think it was more just like sharing information. I had no idea what I was doing. I wish I documented. And then when I graduated school, I knew that I wanted to start my own practice right away. And I saw social media as this avenue to really, really build that. And that's when I started to just go hard on my social media. And I was posting on TikTok and Instagram. And as I started to gain more traction, my practice started to build. And I was like, wow, more naturopathic doctors need to be doing this and using this. And so that's kind of my creator journey, and still trying to figure it out.
Amazing. Well, you have I was looking actually this morning, and to me, I feel like you've grown a lot in the last, 6 months? Maybe not. I don't know if you can pinpoint it, but you're at 200,000 plus followers, which is incredible. And so I feel like you have a really dedicated, from what I can see, like a really engaged, dedicated group. Really interested to know how you build that, and for any professional thinking of this, because obviously I'm biased, but I do agree with you that if you're going to have a profession, social media kind of can only help, obviously, if it's in a strategic way. And whether you're a doctor, lawyer, real estate agent, esthetician, whatever it might be, it doesn't hurt for people to be able to find you, because that's realistically where people are going. How did you kind of figure out the balance of what you wanted to share on social, and how did that directly reflect into your practice expanding? Because it's amazing to hear the finish line of, okay, I created content and I saw my practice start to get busier. Did it happen right away for you, or was there something that you tried and tested and then kind of saw that spike?
Yeah, it definitely did not happen right away.
Right. It would be amazing. But
it would be amazing. I wish I could say that. That my first video went viral. I always tell everybody starting a business, I'm like, the first 6 to 8 months, I don't think I've ever cried so much in my life. Just figuring all of it out, because when I started my practice, I wasn't just figuring out how to market, I was also figuring out how to be a doctor. All of my friends, except for one of my friends, she also started her practice with me, but everybody else started at a clinic, so they had so much support. So I was trying to balance these two hats of trying to be a good doctor but also market. And
so you always from the beginning started your own practice?
Yeah, from the beginning I was having a practice. Right now I just joined as a part of a clinic, but in the beginning for the past 5 years I've just had my own practice. And so juggling those two hats was very, very difficult. When I really opened up my doors and then I just started posting, I wouldn't say I saw the growth on socials right away, but I did see people starting to reach out. And that's what I always have to remind myself as a business owner as well. Being viral on social media isn't always the goal here, because I know so many business owners who maybe have like 10, 20K followers and they are booked and busy and they get so many clients from social media. So I was okay with that. And it was interesting just to see when I did start to put myself out there, how quickly people started to reach out and how quickly I started to get built.
Yeah, that's the biggest misconception I feel about the creator versus professional approach, is that professionals think, well, I have to be a creator. I don't want to be looked at as a creator, or I don't want to put myself out there, or I don't want to discredit maybe my practice or whatever it might be by looking like a creator. And people think, I need virality. So I need to start like dancing around and doing trends. And if I'm not doing that, I'm not going to grow, and the algorithm isn't going to push people towards me. And it's just so not the case. So it's great to hear.
And I had to unfollow a lot of big creators. I had to unfollow them because I would look at them and what they were doing, and I would feel the need to do that. And I had to constantly pull myself back and remind myself, no, Bisleen, that is not your goal. It would be great if we go viral, but let's make some money, get yourself booked, and make an impact in your community the way that you want to make it. And I feel like constantly that's something I have to check in with myself still to this day all the time, because it's really cool to look at people's social media growing, and it's so easy to try to follow other people's dreams and get away from your intention. And I think that's so important to constantly remind yourself, like, what is my intention with what I'm doing? And I've actually now started to do that with every single post I'm making. So before I would just randomly go on TikTok and I'm just like, this is a cool thought, let me just post about it. But now I take a step back, I have an avatar that I've created, and I ask myself, would Sarah like this? That's my avatar's name. And okay, I don't think she would like it. How can I say this in a way that would resonate with Sarah? Or, you know what, actually, I don't need to post this at all. It doesn't really match and align with my intention. And I think that intentionality with my content and I've started to notice a difference with just how it's growing with just that. That's
so interesting. And even, coming from a marketing background or a storytelling background, that's what they say in Marketing 101. It's like, who is your persona? So that's such an amazing tactic. And I really want, other creators listening to this to really take that when they're professional of who is their actual target. And it's so easy, like you said, to play the comparison game, to feel like you need to be the professional showing up, the expert, but then also the creator, but you also have to grow and you're not growing fast enough. And it's so easy to get caught up in that kind of tailspin, but that's not always needed to actually grow the practice. I know so many professionals who have this kind of really dedicated, even when I say a smaller audience of 10,000, 20,000, and they are booked solid. I know a stylist booked solid at 10,000 followers. I know a makeup artist booked solid at 20,000. So it's not always about growth, and it's so easy to get caught up in that. 100%. So great takeaway to kind of make a persona and just remind yourself, who am I actually trying to target? Are you targeting somebody that you want to just follow you as a human, or do you actually have a business purpose of filling a practice or filling something like that? Or is it potentially both?
Yeah, because those are two different people, right? People that are just going to follow you for information and for your videos and the likes and comments, and it's very different than posting for someone who has a pain point and they want that support and help right away. And that's two different pieces of content that you're going to create.
Okay. Was there a format of content, a piece of content that you can really kind of go back and pinpoint that was a new stage of growth, or has it been more kind of systematic over time?
Definitely. So one of the things that I am going to say that I feel like I made a mistake with my content that I'm learning now, and honestly business as well, is it took me a while to find my niche. And although I focused on mental wellness, and there's not a lot of naturopathic doctors focusing on that, I did everything under the space of mental wellness. At one point I was like ADHD, another point I was like anxiety.
I remember this when you first joined the program.
I was doing like everything. And, you know, everybody has their divine timing, all that stuff. And I'm glad where I am now, but it took me a very long time to find my niche. And I do feel like that's something that's held me back. But what I also think is interesting about finding your niche, sometimes I feel like it just comes to you. I feel like you need to experiment with everything, and then you really land on like, this is what I
was going to say, it's actually not a mistake. So I don't want you to think of it as a mistake, because it actually has to happen.
Yeah.
And you have to try as a creator or as a business owner, you have to try different things. Even, you know, different pricing packages or different tiers. When has anybody nailed something on the first go?
Never.
And even if they do, it's not luck. They've researched it. They've tried it in other capacities.
Exactly. It's just, you know, when you hit that moment, because right now I'm just like, a nervous system is like, this is what I want to talk about. It's what I talk to my patients about too, but it just took me some time to get there. So it's easy to look back and be like, oh, I wish I figured this out 3 years ago. But again, everything has its timeline. So I do feel like, especially for my Instagram, it was funny the moment that it really blew up. This was almost 2 years ago now. And I was actually at one of my friend's wedding in Mexico. And for the month of May, which is Mental Health Month, I was like, I'm going to do a tip every single day. So I was showing up on my Instagram and I was like, hi, I'm Dr. Bisleen. This is Mental Health Month, day one, tip number one. Yep. And initially, I had like probably like 5,000 followers at that point. And
so 2 years ago, you had 5,000 followers, and you're now at 200,000.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you can scale as an expert, just for people.
Yeah, you can.
Listening. You can scale.
You can scale. And yeah, so I showed up every single day, and it was just such casual videos. And it was funny, like sometimes like during the wedding, point two, I was just like, oh my God, I forgot to record the video for today. Let me do it. And I would tell everybody, like, move to the back, I'm doing my video. And it was that week that my account just blew up, and I went from like 5,000 to like, you know, over 150,000, 175,000.
Wow.
And it just blew up in the span of a week.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you know, when we talk about series, this is a question we get a lot. Series, formats, it can be so easy to really bog yourself down in a series. Yeah. So it sounds like, and I want to hear more about it, but it sounds like you had the right approach where you were like, this is not a series that has a difficult narrative, or I have to be in a studio, or I have to look a certain way, or it has to be something where it's complex editing. It sounds like this series was more of a format and a way to storytell a concise idea.
Yes.
If I'm not mistaken.
Yep, exactly. And that's something too as a creator today that I'm working on, is I'm trying to find a format that resonates with my audience, but something I really enjoy. Right. And I love just getting in front of the camera and talking. So instead of me trying to find a complex format and trying to make the filming more difficult for myself, because then I know I'm not going to do it, I'm just trying to work on how I'm speaking, my hooks, my storytelling, and trying to capture people in those ways versus trying to do something really wild with my filming. Yeah. Because I think it's so important to find that balance, because if you make it too hard for yourself, you're never going to want to do it.
No, and that's what I find, especially with the professional segment of creators that I work with, that's what they bog themselves down into, because being a professional, you have some schooling or you have credentials, and it's so easy to have that kind of perfectionist mentality 100%. Of it has to look a certain way. And I love what you said of, I'm at this wedding and I say, like, you know, move the people over. I got to film my content. And that is the right approach. We always talk about that situational content of being able to just do it anywhere is why, you know, people love what they do. And then when people don't, it's because it's not easily integrated.
Yeah. And you know what I'm also learning too is that people don't care. They just want to know you can help them. And I think that's what's also so different as like a professional showing up online, because, you know, aside from, would it be cool if I had 1 million followers? Of course. Who doesn't want that?
I mean, you probably will, knowing where you're headed.
Rachel. But that's not my purpose, right? My purpose is to help people. And I'm so passionate about what I do. And really why I started going on social media is like, I can only help so many people one-on-one. Yeah. But to have this platform where I can reach millions, like why would I not take advantage of this opportunity? And I think it's so important for us to remember as professionals, people don't care about your lighting. They don't care about any of that stuff. Can you help them? Can you show them that you see their pain? And
or for me, it's just value, right?
And and give them just that value. That's all they care about, whether it's going to be amazing lighting or whether you're in Mexico at a friend's wedding and you need to tell people to move to the side because you have this idea to share. Just do it.
Although the lighting in Mexico probably wasn't so bad.
It was
but you're just facing the right way. But yeah, you're really hitting that on, is that you know, a lot of creators think it has to look a certain way in order to perform, and you're focusing on the right things. You're focusing on the hook. You're focusing on the length of the video, the value that you're providing in the video. And that's something that creators definitely spin into, of thinking, okay, this is only going to perform if it looks a certain way and is this kind of perfect aesthetic, when in reality, you should be focusing on how you're saying it. And that's the biggest difference.
It matters so much more. And again, this is something I'm learning now too, is because before I would just like rush and want to get everything done, and I'm kind of slowing things down a bit more and focusing on like each piece of the video. So what I told myself, I was like, first quarter of the year, all I'm going to do is nail hooks. So I'm just focusing on really just, getting the hooks out and having the same concept of video, but doing it multiple times in different ways to see what's resonating. And I feel like I've never just slowed down and been so intentional with stuff. And this is actually now when I'm seeing the growth. And you know what's helped with this? Nervous system regulation.
I know, I want to get back to that. Okay, but on hooks, how do you find your hooks?
How do I find my hooks? Yes. So because I've done a lot of content now at this point, I've seen some things that have been working with my content. So I take that hook, put it into ChatGPT and see what variations. I learned this from Creator Method. Just saying. And then try to find the variations of those hooks. The other thing I do, TikTok I find is that platform that I don't care too much about what I'm saying. So if I have an idea in my head, I will just, make the video and see how it does.
We call TikTok our testing ground.
Exactly.
It's a great place to just test.
Although it doesn't always translate well to Instagram.
Not always.
No, not always.
But it feels like I'm just testing it on TikTok, and then if it does really well, typically then it will do well on Instagram. But yes, sometimes it doesn't necessarily translate.
Or sometimes what I'll do is I'll have an idea of a video, and then I will take like 5 minutes and write like 3 different hooks and see which one would resonate, and at some point kind of just test them all.
Okay. So a big part of what I'm hearing also, and this probably goes into your practice, is really not quitting. And it's so easy to try something or to try a format and to quit. And if you would have done that in that format that we're speaking about in Mexico, that first time that you added it and you just said, I don't like this, or I don't look great, or look at what have happened.
No one's watching, right? Like, because the first 2 weeks for that whole month, I was getting like 1,000 views. And I was getting discouraged. I was just like, why did I even do this? Nobody cares. And then literally the third week to then have like 150,000 people now start following me. Like, you just never know what's going to work. And I just have that philosophy that it's just like, why will you not win if you keep going? The only way you can lose is if you quit. So if you just don't quit, you will find a way. And I've seen that with my business, seen that in other areas of life. And it's just like, just don't quit.
Yeah, and not everything works out on the first go.
It never does. So, what works out on the first go, Rachel?
Literally nothing. Okay, so let's get back to nervous system. Yes. I mean, I was woken up at 6 a.m. by my kids yelling, "Is it morning time yet?" And it was like pitch black in my room. So my nervous system at this stage of life is admittedly not super great.
Yes,
what are some of the, so we'll talk about that, or I'll book a session with you, but what are some of the most common challenges that you are finding? I guess we can separate it between overall practice, then maybe we can get to creators that you're finding. Are there certain themes, certain things and events that are happening in life, or is there any kind of commonalities that you see with nervous system?
Nervous system stuff in general? Yeah. Tons. We're going to start. I feel like we just live in such a dysregulated world, I mean, first of all, where's our phones? Like, let's start with that. Everybody's just constantly overstimulated and no one's giving their mind and body space to actually calm down. With nervous system stuff specifically, which is why I also love to focus on it, is there's a big misconception on what supports our nervous system. So a lot of the advice out there is like, take deep breaths or like tap. And don't get me wrong, all of that stuff is great.
I told my child to actually take a deep breath, and they were like, it's not exactly what I'm talking about.
You're stressing yourself out more, exactly. And that advice is really great, but I find that we forget about the other aspects of health that are really important. So I talk to my patients a lot about the food that they eat. That's either supporting or dysregulating more, right? And especially our blood sugar levels. So if your blood sugar level is like, spiking up and crashing all throughout the day, that's going to dysregulate your blood sugar levels, your sleep, and supporting your sleep. Because that's also going to dysregulate your blood sugar levels. And just our day-to-day routines, right? Us just sitting down all day, never really getting up, never giving ourselves any breaks. And what I always tell people is that it's not about having a calm nervous system all throughout the day, because if you're calm all the time, it means you're dead. Right. And you've done something
It's also
wrong.
Not realistic. You're probably not pushing yourself. You might not be successful, all those things.
Exactly. Instead, what we want to do is, like, when we get into the stress state, we want to find a micro moment to bring ourselves down. Get into the stress state and bring ourselves down. And what are the 3 things that allow our nervous system to come down? Silence, stillness, slowness.
Okay.
And whenever I say those words, me and my patients, we always laugh.
No, I'm laughing. I'm like, yeah, totally. That's That's my day. Yeah.
Because
Tons of time for that. Yeah.
Nobody ever gets those pieces into their day, right? Because we're always on the go. Oh, that's the other thing too. Everybody just always being on the go, on to the next thing, right? And that's something actually I've done very differently in my life now. Since I've started to support my nervous system before, I've started to get really intentional about where my time and energy goes. Because before I was just trying to do it all, and I'm not trying to do it all anymore, right? Like I said, for example, with content, I just want to master hooks for the first 3 months. That's it, nothing else. And I feel like when you just go with things at this pace and just slower, it just ends up so much better for you, and you feel better as you do it.
No, people think, if I do it all, that means I'm succeeding. No. And it's the opposite. If you're doing it all, then you're giving, 10% or 5% to each task versus really excelling and mastering one.
And trust me, I was the queen of doing it all. And like when I was in naturopathic medical school, I had like 4 or 5 jobs. I was in school. I was just doing all these different things. And I look back and I'm like, for what? Like, why? It's not like you're going to get an award at the end of the day. Like, congratulations, you
did the most.
You did the most. Like, here's your award and trophy. No, and instead you end up actually feeling way worse.
Yeah. Okay. So you touched on a couple things. So food, sleep, and then my hypothesis also was, again, just the way that the world is right now with social media and with everybody being on their phones, and how, even looking at my parents' generation, they went to work, even as entrepreneurs, they went to work and then they came home and there was no overlap. Like, people actually couldn't reach them. Like, it wasn't like people were calling their home phones to ask them questions about business or, to make a sale. So that was my hypothesis of kind of the way that the world is moving. So we kind of talked about health and like I said, food, sleep, all of those things, blood sugar. And then there's a little bit of the environmental, whether it's pressures or a lot. So, okay. So it sounds like those are the biggest ones. Yeah. One of the things that I actually did, I always love to start the year with doing an exercise of like what really worked for me last year and what didn't. So I did that. I have a group of women who are all business leaders, and we do this together at the beginning of the year. And I pinpointed that the number one positive change I made last year was putting my phone on Do Not Disturb at 9 p.m. And I know it's one of those, like, I rolled my eyes at it for years, being like, oh, like, first of all, how? Second of all, like, really, does it make that much of a difference? But honestly, even in the middle of the night, even I would wake up and even feel that light of a notification going off on my phone. And even that, I would find like my heart rate would go up. So any little tips like that are easy, like takeaways for people? Yeah,
so that's a great point with that. There's actually research to show, like, even if your phone isn't on, if it's in like your eyesight range, like even that can stress us out and put our nervous system in a different state. Like, just try it next time when you're working on your laptop. Just take your phone and put it just behind laptop and just see the difference that you'll feel in that. Honestly, the biggest tip that I can give is really nervous system support is finding micro moments throughout the day where you can give your nervous system a chance to come down. So for example, yesterday morning after my workout, I went into the sauna and I just sat there and meditated for 10 minutes. Every single other person was on their phone. And I was like, you guys, come on, just for 10 minutes, get off your phones. So that was a moment where I brought my nervous system down.
So have one task, ideally at least, where your phone is not involved.
Your phone isn't involved. Or ultimately what I say is finding micro moments or tasks where you can tie stillness, silence, and slowness. So for example, another great one, when we're driving, we're always listening to something. So the last 10 minutes of the drive here, I turned off my music and I just like practiced deep breathing and just getting myself into a nice calm state before coming here, supporting my nervous system. If you're washing dishes, just go a little bit slower, right? We're always so fast and rushing through things. So it's looking at how you can tie nervous system support to the things you're doing, not finding more time for it. Because I find when we tell ourselves, oh my God, now I need to find time to meditate, I need to find time to be slow. It's like, no, just do it with the things that you're already doing. If you're gonna walk, right? If you're gonna walk from the studio back to your car, just walk a little bit slower. That's a moment where you support your nervous system.
Amazing. I can do that.
Yeah, you can. Right?
I walked in being like, oh no, I'm going to be her worst patient.
No, but it's just like when you look at it this way and it's tying it to things you are already doing, it becomes so much easier. If you're going to brush your teeth, don't go so hard, just slower.
Right. Okay, so you can do it in micro moments during the day. It's not this like massive change where everybody's like, okay, in order to be my most healthy, physical and mental self, I need to wake up at 5 and do this and fit this in and have, and it's just not.
Yeah, and I mean, it's great if you can do that, but you also don't have to do that to be your healthiest and best self.
Okay, so for creators who are on their phone all the time, and that is their livelihood or their job or how they support their business, I guess same advice, but anything that you do personally or that you would teach teach somebody coming to you asking for help?
Yeah.
I know you talked about some moments, but anything
Yes.
for like creators specifically that you would recommend?
Yeah, and I've definitely struggled with this because, and I still to this day struggle with it a little bit. It's like constantly checking my phone for that, like, how's this post doing? Who's liked? Who's commented? And needing to do that multiple times a day. So I'm not perfect, so a work in progress. But I find what's really helped for me is scheduling out time when I'm actually going to be on my phone. I shouldn't be all throughout the day responding to comments. I shouldn't be all throughout the day looking for what's a good post that's like popping in my niche so I can replicate it or get inspiration from it. And so scheduling time to properly record, to prep for my social media. At the end of the day is when I'm going to go reply back to my comments and check how my posts are doing. And doing that, I think that has made the biggest difference for me and my nervous system. So I'm not constantly checking and looking at things. And then I have all my notifications turned off. I don't know who's liking what, who's sharing what at any point. I'm really surprised at how many people have it turned on.
I know. And how many people, I mean, I understand, but when you have a vision or a purpose, so whether you're a creator and your vision is, you know, I want to grow and I want to, you know, be a massive person of influence, or I'm a professional and I want to be on stages and I want to speak. When you have a goal in mind, I'm always so interested at why then these micro interactions matter to people more than some of the bigger ones. So why does a like or the amount of likes that you get on your post, why does that feel heavier to people than booking a on stage appearance or showing up at a podcast? So I'm always so interested in that. So
easy dopamine hits.
Right.
Really easy dopamine hits. And it's interesting too, right? Because just the way our brain is wired and what it gets hooked onto. Because as soon as those likes and comments start to feel good to you, then all of a sudden now our value and worth is tied to it. And that's been really big for me just for my own personal journey, just working on my value and worth and what it's tied to. And I think it's so easy for us to tie it to the wrong things. And that is definitely one of them.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, I think that we're now so trained to have those dopamine hits.
Yeah.
Would you think that we need to find those elsewhere, or we need to train or retrain our mind to not need them?
Retrain our mind to not need them. Okay. 100%. The other big issue is that nobody can stand boredom anymore.
Yeah.
And considering we are creatives, boredom is so key because it's through that you actually have new ideas. And that's where, for example, like when I was sitting in the sauna at the gym, I was like, oh my God, I just had like 10 new content ideas. But I wouldn't have had that if I was just scrolling on my phone and looking at things.
Absolutely.
And I find that our inability to be bored leads us to do destructive things that we really shouldn't be doing.
Yeah.
So I think it's so important to retrain the mind to be bored. I also find too that learning how to be bored was really helpful for my business because I was also the queen of, you know, shiny object syndrome. So every 6 months there was something new going in my business, or I would change my niche up.
Right.
And I think being bored is so important because this is how, you know, for example, I'm going to be able to focus on just hooks because that's boring. It is. When you actually nail it down to the stuff that helps your business grow, and even as a content creator grow, it's actually really boring stuff to like go down. And like,
boredom has a negative connotation.
It has
boredom actually can be an amazing thing.
It can be an amazing thing, and to be able to sit and to kind of reiterate and do the same things over and over and over again. Not to say it can't be fun, but a lot of that aspect is boring, trying to perfect it and just get better at it. Right.
So it's retraining your brain to be okay with mundane.
Exactly.
And a lot of, you know, business growth happens in that mundane or that repeatability.
Yeah.
And that's what we see. Like the more that we repeat something, whether it's any part of our business, the more successful we actually get at it. And then the more you kind of learn, but it doesn't feel as exciting and shiny.
It doesn't.
But that's not always a good thing.
It's not always a good thing, right? And it's so funny because in my practice, I'll have patients tell me like, I don't like to eat healthy. It's so boring. Or my God, I just hate walking. It's so boring. Yeah. And I always tell them, like, your health is supposed to be boring. That's how you nurture consistently. Go find fun in something. Go start a hobby, okay? Yeah. Like, go do something else. Go travel. But don't try to find fun in your health because then you won't be consistent. And you need to find fun in other areas of your life.
Yeah, and I guess, like, I'm at a different stage of life. Yeah. Clearly, we've established our age difference. But, you know, for me, it's, you know, I've done that. I did that. I had the fun. I tried different things. I worked in really, you know, fast-paced I mean, this still is a really, really fast-paced environment, and being in the creator economy is. Yes. But it doesn't have to be that immediate dopamine hit in order to equal that.
Exactly.
And I think that that's like the split that we're saying is you can still have that and you can still show up creatively and you can still, you know, push the envelope and try new things, but it shouldn't be what your goal is. Your goal should be the long term,
Exactly.
What is this actually going to do for either my platform or my business?
Yes. Or even what I've tried to do as well is I've tried to retrain myself to find the dopamine in just posting the post instead of the number of likes and comments I'm getting, which is really tough. Still working on that. I know when I get there. But I think just again, that's falling in love with the process instead of the outcome. Because when you fall in love with that, it makes it so much easier to keep going and to not quit.
Yeah, Gary and I were actually speaking about this last night, that we learn just as much, which is everything in life. We learn just as much from the posts that don't perform as we do the posts that really perform.
Yes.
And so it's also looking at that.
Yeah.
Right, exactly.
Yes.
And so it's really important. Okay, well, why didn't this work? Was it the length? Was it the cook? So it's not, the lighting was wrong or it wasn't in the right location. That is never the answer. It's, again, could we have done this better? Is it the subject matter that's not hitting? And really, diving into what's working and what's not, as I find fascinating. So instead, focus
boring,
there.
Rachel.
Yeah, exactly. And then you spoke a lot about niche. And so I want to go back there a little bit, because a lot of people get really bogged down into I need to find my niche and what is my niche. But what you're saying is it really was a focus of, yes, a niche, but some might say okay, naturopathic medicine is a niche. But what I want to go back to a little bit is it was really a focus in, okay, I can't talk about 20 things at all time and be that expert or that, focus in on that. But instead, I want people to know me for X.
Yes. And I think niche too is it's not always subject matter. Your niche can be the problem you solve or the person you help. That could be a niche, or the way that you specifically do something. And I think it's finding what type of that niche that you want to focus on, because before I was always told you need to pick a condition and you need to focus on that. I'm not gonna lie to you, I do feel me honing down even more in the mental health and wellness space, I have noticed a growth and increase in terms of clients booking with me, just my content growing as well. So I think it does help to an extent, but I think it's finding, like you said, what do you want to be known for?
Right, it's tied to expertise rather than, okay, I need to find a niche that's going to help me grow on social. So it sounds like you, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like you really had that good balance of, okay, in order for my platform to grow, my content to hit, it needs to be a little bit more focused, and I can't do all these things, but it actually was something that you thought about and tied to what is it that I'm an expert or that I'm really knowledgeable about, and what do you like talking about and helping and teaching.
Exactly. And I think also that just as a practitioner, I feel that just makes me a better practitioner when I just hone down on one specific thing and with every single patient try to get a little bit better at it, and I just think it just helps overall.
All right. Let's talk about how obviously you have a practice. Now you're also starting at a clinic. You're creating content. So how do you manage and balance all of those things? So especially being, talking about nervous system, talking about notifications, what are some of your strategies to make yourself feel grounded and balanced when you're balancing all those things?
Yeah. So definitely priorities. I feel before I used to try to do it all, and I don't. And I never say I try to do it all anymore at all. And for this year, for example, specifically, my focus is my business. So when I look at my life and how I'm planning my life, everything is planned around that. So that means that friends can't reach me in the middle of the day. I try to be really mindful of the things that I really book in. And if something isn't aligned with my business goal, then I don't add it into that schedule. And I'm still honestly figuring out my balance. I feel every week it does change up a little bit, but my planning has to be on point. So every Sunday I will take 10-15 minutes and I will look at my week and I will plan out my week. And I know which days I'm in clinic, which days I'm going to film, record, edit. Sometimes it might switch up a little bit, but mostly it's pretty much the same. So that planning has to be there. And then before I go to sleep, the night before, I always have the next day planned out. Before, what I was doing, I was waking up and was going to be okay, let's see what I'm going to do. Never do that.
Yeah, no, this is what I preach. So it's
never,
great that a professional is saying that I'm on the right path.
Doctor's orders, never do that. So I never do that anymore. And so I wake up and have a game plan of action. And I think really it's about honing down and focusing on the few things that I want to get better at. So for example, like I said before, is for the first quarter of this year, all I want to do is nail hooks. So if my lighting is off, if the quality isn't the best, if my storytelling, if the rest 30 seconds of the video was awful, but the first 2 seconds were great, that's okay. So just really prioritizing and deciding what are those 1 to 2 things that I want to improve with what I'm doing, and just focusing on that. That's been like the ultimate game changer for me.
And when do you actually, between working with patients and creating content, what does that look like? So you obviously know what your day is looking like. Do you schedule it in the middle of your day? So do you go from maybe like a patient to then creating content, or do you batch it in different ways?
Yeah, so I don't do that. I definitely have days where I do content. So I have a day where I'm doing all my like research and all my scripts, so everything's all planned out. Then I have a different day where I'm recording content. And then usually either the recording day, depending on how long the recording is, I will edit it as well. Or then I have the next day where I edit. So I have about like 3 days where I really try to dedicate to content. And then within that, I also have research for patients. And then the other days I try to just keep fully as patient days. And then also what I do is before I actually get into the clinic, I'll sit in my car and I'll have content ideas and I'll just record in my car before I go and see patients. And so this way everything's kind of ready to go. I found that when I was just like jumping from patient to content, it was just way too much task switching, and my brain just was not happy with that.
Yeah, no, I wanted to see that's our experience as well with all the creators I work with, and with Valeria, is again that notion of like needing to do it all every single day. And the most successful creators that we've seen for sure in the program and also outside of it are people who approach it in that way of, okay, I can't be creative and strategic and an expert at my business all at the same time. That is what sets people up for failure, and it's really separating that out.
Yes, 100%.
Okay.
But
again,
the
doctor's
biggest
orders.
game changer. Literally been the biggest game changer for me, just separating all that stuff out.
Okay. What would you say is something that you've learned in Creator Method? Because you've been doing this before you joined. So you've been a member for a year?
Almost a year, coming up to
almost a year.
Yes.
What is something that you feel like you learned that you didn't know, or that changed your perception, that led to some sort of growth?
Yeah, so definitely learned a lot. I think the biggest piece was really understanding the behind the scenes of like a very successful creator, and seeing like she doesn't just get up and get lucky with any of this stuff, and just understanding the amount of work it truly takes to be at that level. And I think that a lot of people don't understand that, because it can seem so easy to see this like polished video.
Right. How hard is it to put a phone up and film some content? Right.
And you don't understand the amount of work that it really takes. And I think the biggest takeaway is just understanding the iterations it takes to really get to that level and place that you want to get to. And also understanding that you can get there, but it will take trial and error. And the best thing that you can do is to test. See what's working, do more of that, and continue to do more of that, and just continue to test that out. I wasn't doing that before. I didn't have any intentionality before. Before I was just like, what feels good to post? Or like, I saw this other creator do this, let me try this. There wasn't any of that seriousness and intentionality to it. Now I have like an Excel doc and Notion templates, and I have all of my systems kind of laid out. So I'm really doing that testing to see what works.
Okay. Amazing. Yeah. I'm always so, again, I've said it before, but I'm so interested in seeing creators. And my number one thing that I have, and we do one-on-ones and some consulting within the practice, and I'm always so curious to see that creators have success or failures in certain areas, and they just let it go. And they have success when they think, okay, this is a one-off, or this was because of the music I used, or because of something, and it's not ever that simple. And then we always like, repeat it. And I look at creators so many times, I'm like, but I'm looking at your feed, and I don't even have all the data, but I'm just looking at what I can see externally. And I see that every time you talk about X, or if you're in this location, or any commonality, it overperforms. So why are you not doing more of it? That's one of the number one questions I always ask. And I always get brought back to like a blank face of just, they get on this kind of hamster wheel, and they don't actually take the time to pause and
that's
look
exactly
at that.
what it is. They just didn't do it because they didn't take the time to do it. I'm not saying I'm perfect at it. I could probably get better at that too, but it's just taking the time to do that. And I feel like people don't understand how big of a difference that actually does make, because when you do start to do that, you're just like, whoa, the growth, you just grow so much faster.
Yeah. No, we have a creator in the program, and she really focused in on one format. And it was like her doing push-ups at the gym.
Okay.
So yeah, it was Elena.
With like B-roll?
It was just her doing push-ups at the gym.
Okay.
And she focused in and she grew
Okay.
like incredibly fast with this one format.
Wow.
And so again, I think, you know, so many people want to have this diverse and interesting set of content mix. And sometimes it's just trying and playing around with a couple different things to really pinpoint what really works. And then once it works, the growth just skyrockets from there. So now she's kind of injecting and she's trying new things, and that's all part of it. But I find that creators are so nervous to like go in on an idea they have. And sometimes it's intuition, sometimes it's gut. There's a little bit of that.
Yes.
And other times it's, you know, data proven.
Exactly.
But you're not going to have the data proven until you do it a considerable amount of time.
Yeah, 100%. And you just never know what's going to hit off. I still to this day am just so surprised at the things that take off. Like I do these like quote posts. So it's literally like a sentence and I just post it and the background is like white and I have a caption just explaining the quote. And one of them just got over like 1 million like views or impressions or whatever, and I was just like, I would have never thought that this is what would have happened, but it's just like you never know. And now I'm just honing down on more of those posts and I'm seeing that growth because I'm like okay, clearly my audience really likes this. And you know what's interesting, what's really helped with this too, nervous system regulation, I feel like before I post or before I do my day of like ideas and researching, I just like really like slow down, take a few deep breaths, do a meditation, and just like tune in to what feels good. That's also helped with me being able to show up on camera. Like before I'll go on camera, I'll take those like few deep breaths, really set my intention and who I want to show up as and the energy that I want to put out. And it's been so interesting. Some of my patients, because they watch my videos and follow me, lately they've been saying, they're like, wow, your energy's just like different. Like I've been loving your posts lately. And I'm just like, I love to hear that.
Amazing.
Yeah.
No, I mean, if you think of, you know, even walking, or a lot of people are nervous about public speaking or anything like that, or being on a podcast. Yeah. And a lot of the time it is that those cues of the nervous system, of the sweating, the clammy hands, the increased heart rate. Yeah. So if you can really master how to get that out of the way, then you're just focused on your craft and your expertise and what you can show up.
Exactly.
saying.
And show up how you want to.
Yeah. For professionals and, you know, experts or practitioners, doctors, whatever it might be, how did you actually, so we've talked about kind of how your content grew your practice. Yeah. What were some of the ways, because there's lots of tactics and lots of like viral, you know, things floating around social media of like how to grow your practice by this, or how to acquire more leads or anything like that. What did you actually do, and how did you set up your social media for people to find you on social and then actually book with you?
Yes. So definitely the type of content that I was making. So one, I want to be known as an authority, especially when it comes to nervous system regulation work. So to be an authority, that means I have to know my craft well. So I do a lot of educational posts and content to show that I know this stuff. And I try to bring in like research studies and bring in pieces in this educational content that establish me as an authority. It's not just me talking about stuff. You know, I'll be like, I was talking to my patient about this, and people know I'm in practice. I'll bring research studies up. So just some examples of that. The other piece too is, you know, what we talk about in Creator Method a lot is trust is what's really missing in today's day and world, and especially in the creator world, because people don't know who to trust and who to look at. And so to really build that trust, I try to bring in patient case studies and talk about what I'm doing to actually support people, or talk about just what my method is to kind of start to build that trust. Unfortunately, as a naturopathic doctor, I can't really promote testimonials.
This is my next question,
which is a bit of a shame, because I'm like, that's the ultimate trust. Yeah. But I'll do that by talking about patient case studies instead, so people can kind of see how I've helped and supported people. And so kind of doing those two things. And then also I try to show aspects of myself as well. That is a part that I still really struggle with today as a creator, just showing other aspects of my life. Like I'm really good at being like, you know, I woke up at 5 a.m., went to the gym, and showing parts of my life, but then showing other parts like my friends, my family, or just some fun things that I do. And we've had these
I know. I'll never forget you. I think the first time that I saw you on a call, the question was, you know, I had a video. I think I can't remember if it was before you posted or after, and it had done well, and it was you at a concert. Yeah. And your concern was, you know, are my patients not going to take me seriously if I'm at a concert? And I remember thinking, but you're a human being. Yeah. Like, and from my take at least, you know, you want to go to somebody that is realistic. Yeah. You don't want to go to somebody, to our earlier conversation, that is going to set yourself up for like a lifestyle that is just not your lifestyle. Exactly. And I think most people probably want to go for dinner and indulge sometimes, or go to a concert.
Like, fun fact, your doctor goes to a concert.
Right. Like they're humans too. And I find that, you know, the doctors and the people that I work with the most are the people who I know who they are as a human and as an expert or as a doctor. And that's what makes me gravitate towards them, because they're not this like persona, they're an actual human that is showing me that it is actually real to practice what they teach. So I remember that was one of the first ones.
I'm still struggling with it. I'm still working on it, but I'm experimenting with posts here or there. Like the other day, I just had this idea. My mom was sitting downstairs watching a movie, and I was just like, let's go see if my mom thinks I'm her best friend, because she's my best friend. And I just thought it was like a fun, cute video, because I've never really shown like my parents and my family online. So I'm trying to experiment and see what works and challenge myself in different ways. But of course, still kind of staying within the boundaries of what feels good to me, like, other relationships and things like that I don't want to talk about online. So just staying within those boundaries.
Yeah, I think it's important, and to your point, to pick what that is for you. There's no magic. I always get people asking like, what are the boundaries that I should have? And there's no one size fits all. It's really, what are the boundaries that you want for yourself? And yes, there's certain things that you want to talk about or bring up or not. Do you find that there is a desire, now that you've grown this community, there is a desire for more personal content?
Yes.
Or it's still probably more the expert, but do you get that?
Yes, I totally feel that, because with this as well, as much as I love my one-on-one practice, like I have other goals and things that I want to do. So I'd love to be able to build my own brand up, and part of that means showing other aspects of myself. What I actually want to know from you that I find is interesting, because when I look at some other doctors who are, or just other people within the mental health space that are doing really, really well, and I'm talking about millions of followers. There's a specific creator that comes to mind. She doesn't show any of her personal life. It's literally just her getting in front of the camera and just sharing a tip. And so, like, what do you think about? It's so interesting to see what works for some people, because some people don't show any of their personal. I have no idea anything else about her, but here she is with like millions of followers. Like, what are your thoughts on stuff like that?
I think for me, it's more, again, what is the person's goal? So I would say, like, I don't know who you're referencing, but if their goal is to be looked at as an expert doctor in their field, and that's the main goal, and they want to speak on like doctor stages, or they want to write a book about their practice or something like that, then yes, keep it completely up to what you're an expert in. So I think number one is goal. And two, when you have some of the most successful creators are ones that have like one format or, one idea that they're consistent, right? Like they're consistently posting over time, and you come back to them because you're coming back to that exact same thing. People see success in that. Where they stop to see success is when they, like, that's all they do, and they don't have, let's say, a practice. So if you're a creator and you're only posting, you don't have a practice, you're not an expert, you're not a doctor, and you're only posting one format, and we see this a lot with TikTokers, that's where you can kind of get into trouble, because you can blow up for this one format. And we've seen it so much. We saw it years ago with like creators getting dressed on a treadmill, for example, and just doing that video
the walking
constantly,
one, right?
constantly.
Yes, I remember that.
But then you don't develop an actual relationship with your community, and then you fall flat. But if you're an expert or a professional, that's what I love about working with professionals, is that it is slightly different, because your expertise is you as a person, you're not a creator. So it is a little bit different.
So could I like get away with not showing like my personal
You absolutely can.
Oh, good to know.
Yes.
I didn't know that was an
so
option.
you can. And that's, but it depends, right? So if you're somebody who blows up, or you find that the content that resonates, it's really personal. That resonates is you sharing your personal experiences, and that makes you more knowledgeable, and that makes people want to work with you more. That's one piece. But for you, I actually think it's because you're an expert at this, and you read, and you're knowledgeable, and you're constantly learning more about this subject. So I actually don't think for you that you need the personal. Again, you might have different goals. You might want to write a book one day, for example, of how your personal life and your business intersects. And you might say, if I want people to read that, I want to include that more. So that's where it ladders up into that overall goal. But for experts, it's not needed.
Okay, good to know.
Again, growth happens from like very personal moments sometimes, but again, growth can happen just from somebody being extremely knowledgeable and people wanting to save that content.
It's true. Again, right? It's the value, especially when you're an expert in a field, just the value and how you can help people. That's what they really want the most.
So I think, the overall answer is, if you're creating content that over and over and over again gets saved and shares because it is extremely valuable, you don't need that personal element. But if you find that you're in a field where that's not necessarily the shareable or the savable type of conversations, or you haven't nailed that yet, then the personal aspect is what really can engage a community.
Got it.
So it's engagement. And so you want people to engage and like and not like, but you want people to share and save your content. That absolutely can happen just from professional content.
And, okay, good to know.
So you don't have to.
Yeah.
And on that note,
yes.
I in your field, and I know with a lot of doctors, surgeons, whatever it might be, there's a lot of regulations and restrictions. So you talked about, client testimonials and things like that and how you get away from it. Yeah. What are some other things that, a creator starting or somebody who's, out of school studying naturopathic medicine or something similar, what are some of the things that they need to be on alert or aware of, and how do they learn about that when they want to create content and also have a practice?
Yes. So one, our regulatory body has lots of guidelines. So going on the website, and I think most professions, they do have regulatory guidelines. So you can go and look at what their advertising, marketing guidelines are. So I know specifically for naturopathic doctors, we can't say, I can't say I'm an expert or I specialize in something, but I can say that I do have a specific focus. We have to also be careful in terms of how I even use a doctor title. So I have to make sure people know that I'm a naturopathic doctor. Patient confidentiality is, of course, a really big one. So even when I'm talking about client case studies, I have to make sure that I'm not sharing anything that someone would look at and be like, oh, I know who she's talking about.
And is that part of the regulation?
Yeah.
Or is that, okay, so that's part of the actual regulation that you can't. So even if a patient's okay with you sharing it, and a lot of professionals come to me and they say, I have all these restrictions. How can I still do this well, in the confines of that? So I'm always curious. Yeah. Okay, so we're going to look up
case studies. So on my website, I have my protocol, and I'm just look at people that went through this protocol. Right. So I have 5-10 minute case studies of PowerPoints I've recorded, and I've tried to think about my different types of avatars and patients that come in. So I'll have a mom, and then I'll have someone who's a clinical director of sales, and just all these different avatars, and showing how they walked through the protocol. That would help them. So the case study thing really helps.
Okay, so it's a case study, and it's not necessarily sharing. It's just sharing maybe, and I think I've seen that from you, success or, change in somebody's habits or change in somebody's health when they've been coming to you, but there's no actual patient information.
Exactly. And then because I've also had my own personal struggles, I do very openly share that on social media a lot as well. And I found that that's really helped too.
Okay, so then we're talking about personal.
Now we're talking about personal.
But again, the point being, you're not being personal for the sake of being personal.
Yes.
You're not all of a sudden you saying I went on a date tonight and this is where it was. And
you
can do that, but if you want.
I draw the line at that.
But I think, in the professional, segment, and what I call it, definitely of creator method, but just professionals in general. Yeah. If it ties back to your overall purpose, that's where you see the success of it. So you become more of an authority and an expert because you're an actual walking practice of what you preach. Exactly. And so that I find is what helps.
Yeah, I find that helps a lot, especially when you have so many restrictions in all the other areas.
Right. I know you don't want to go to someone and be like, I remember I went to a therapist once, and I was looking for somebody again to regulate, my nervous fight or flight kind of mentality. And she was a basket case. And I'm like, you're actually very smart, but I don't know that I really want to take advice.
Yeah, you're stressing my
nervous system. I'm like, what are you, you can't stop fidgeting. Yeah, how are you teaching me?
She can't stop fidgeting.
She can't stop fidgeting. I'm like, wait, I'm coming to you because I need to learn how to stop fidgeting. And you're
twitching.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, hey, this isn't going to work for me.
Yeah, it's wild. You know what's funny? I actually see so many therapists in my practice too, and it's very interesting. It's just interesting. Yeah. I'm going to leave it at that.
Okay. So to round this out, if, whether it's me, I know a lot of creators, a lot of or I would say most, are juggling a lot of things. Yeah. So whether it's, we have a lot of moms in the program, you have kids, you have a social life, you have friendships, you have your practice, you have the content that you're creating. Yeah. What is one piece of advice, a final piece of advice that you can give to a creator, especially, I guess, if they're a professional, but even in general, one piece of advice that they should do listening to this onwards to regulate?
Yeah. I think the biggest advice I can give is stop trying to do it all. Stop trying to do it all and hone down and prioritize and think about what is going to get your best energy and what is going to get your mediocre energy. And depending on the season of life that you're in and making those choices accordingly. So, actually when I saw Courtney at the Creative Method workshop, she's just like, I'm focusing on my business and family right now. And I was like, that's amazing. And anything that doesn't align with those two things, it's just like you don't have the time and capacity for. And I think the more that we can decide and prioritize what is the most important to us, and I know saying business is big, right? Like, what do you mean in business? And it's literally deciding. So for me in my practice, I was like, for the first quarter of this year, I want to get clear on the systems in my practice and have those sorted. And then with my content, I want to nail hooks. And how much more does that simplify things instead of feeling like I need to focus on everything all at once? And so I feel like the more that we can reduce the pressure of trying to do it all and just focus and hone down, it's just going to make everything feel so much easier and better.
Yeah, and it sounds like it's focused, but also nailing down exactly what it is. So it's not saying, okay, I'm going to be focused on work, because work can mean a lot of different things. So I know for some people, it's like, I need to make a lot of money this year. I bought a new house, or I have a mortgage, or I'm expecting a kid, and I need to focus on revenue versus I need to focus operationally and team building. Those are two very different things.
And it's like, if you want to focus on revenue, then decide the 2 to 3 things that bring in the most revenue, and just hone down on those, because really it's the 20% of things that we're doing that are bringing in the most revenue for us. And I think when we can just focus like that, it just makes such a big difference. And then, what really also helps with this, because I find a lot of us are trying to do it all because we're in such a rush. We just are in such a rush to be successful like tomorrow. Yeah. And I feel like when we can just let go of that and trust just divine timing. I don't want to get all spiritual, but again, this is where nervous system support has helped me so much to just be like, maybe I'll get 1 million followers in 5 years. And that is like, I'm okay with that. Maybe it's 10 years. I'm okay with it. It's not going to stop me from my mission. And that's okay. And if it takes me that long, it takes me that long. And I feel like when we can let go of that timeline and that rush, it gives us the opportunity to slow down. And our nervous system loves that.
It's interesting. When I first started working with Gary Valeria, which is about 6 years ago, I'm coming from like more of a corporate background, and KPIs and everything, and I'm putting them all together, which there are definitely things like on our YouTube videos, our videos, what percentage of watch time are we aiming for, or things like that, or, for sales or partnerships, what are your revenue KPIs? But when it came to kind of follower count, I remember asking them the question in my first month working there, saying, how much are you hoping to grow this year? And I'll never forget that they looked at me and like, that's not a question that we can answer. And so they were focused on what we call like hockey stick growth. And so we're always looking for those moments and indicators of when we do something right, we will see an influx, but we cannot control when that's going to happen. So that's actually the only part of, even at our scale, 30 plus employees, that we just don't concentrate on a number of growth. I have to hit this many followers by this date, or we just concentrate on, keep going and trying new things.
Because it just creates so much stress and pressure, because you're right, you can't control that.
Yeah.
I wish we could, but you can't.
You can a little with like the hooks and all the things we're trying, but you really can't.
But you really
can
can't.
Try. You really can't.
You really can't.
If everyone knew how to go viral, everybody would be doing it all the time. Okay, amazing. Well, thank you. I'm going to find moments of calm. What were the 3?
Silence.
Stillness.
Slowness.
Okay, so I was thinking that was C words. Okay. Silence, stillness, calmness.
Slowness.
Okay, see, I'm even having a hard time with that. Okay, I'm going to focus on that, and I want everybody, to try and find moments to do that as well. Okay, well, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thanks so much. This was great.